Is the market really as dead as everyone says it is?
We have a problem.
I want to figure that out today. I think it's going to be a really good conversation because all you hear is about how terrible the market is. And some of it totally worthy, right? You've been hosting open houses lately where you've been the only one showing up.
Yeah, that's it, man. Condos in Wally. I can't even pay someone to come through one of them.
We are going to talk about condos in Wally today. We definitely will. And, among the other markets that are really, really challenging, I want to get to the bottom of how dead the market really is. Get past all the headlines, all the, anecdotal stories and stuff like that, and really just kind of figure out, is it quite as slow as people are saying it is? What I can tell you, I won't tell you yet. How's that?
Let's get into the beer.
All right, let's get into the beer. So what are we drinking here?
White Rock Beach Brewing Company.
Yes, these guys actually reached out to us on our Best of White Rock channel, and we're hoping to have them in because they're just down the road. And we did sample these last week. I'm not gonna lie, so we know what they taste like, and they were quite delicious. So this is a North Bluff Lager, and it's really tasty. They're all tasty. I'm gonna put that order there. All right, let's get into it.
Cool.
So, what's your experience right now as someone who primarily works with buyers? What's your experience right now in the market? Like, what are you seeing out there?
Yeah, there's a lot of inventory out there, and you're going to touch on it later as well. So there's so much for buyers to look at right now that unless unless it's a deal, they're probably going to sit on it, or they're going to say, what is going to come to the market? I have, hundreds of different options within the same asset class. Why am I just going to make that decision? Right?
Yeah.
So,
and fairly enough, I always kind of think about being a buyer, and we've all bought houses before, but I often reflect back on that and think like, if you were fairly convinced that the prices potentially anyways would be cheaper tomorrow, and you keep seeing a new property come up every day or every other day, and they're not being removed from the market maybe as quickly as they once were, would you act? Right? And that's probably the story of the day. On the sales side, so I primarily handle most of the listings for our team, and even just getting showings, we know like how difficult that is right now. And that's not specific to any asset class. Like we have all sorts of properties listed that are all different areas, all that sort of stuff. And it's becoming increasingly difficult just to even get traffic through the door. So let's start peeling this onion back a little bit. And really just, decipher exactly whether the market is dead or not. So let's put things into perspective a bit. We have just come out, and I wouldn't say just, but like we just came out of a provincial election, late last year. I can't, that was already like 6 months ago.
It's crazy thing.
But we also just finished with a federal election, right? Now, how much truth there is behind this, because it only happens once every 4 years, but I've often heard, and I don't know if this is you as well, but like that they're hesitant to make big life decisions based on where the direction of the country goes. I guess whatever party gets in power and their big, massive economic plans and how they're going to spur the market on and all that. I've often heard that a lot of people are hesitant to make decisions because of that.
I agree fully. Yeah, there's a big word out there. It's uncertainty. And hear this a lot. Before, a lot of uncertainty, even right now, post. I mean, we're probably, a month post, and it's still a little bit of uncertainty, but I do believe probably give it 3 more months, we may start to get a bit of certainty. So
Yeah. And, regardless of what side of the political spectrum people are on, they at least know what they've got now. And they've got, so we've got a liberal government or minority liberal government, but Mark Carney is our prime minister. So if nothing more, whether you like him or not, I think that people have to give him a lot of respect because he's clearly a very smart man, right? He's ran 2 large central banks, being England and Canada, both through very difficult times. So, let's hope that all the policies that come out of that, we talked about some of the policies previously that were proposed anyways, but let's hope some of the policies that come out of that have a good impact on the economy, because we certainly could use it. And then, the news every day is changing with the US tariffs and whatnot. It's been quiet for the last little bit, and quiet is good. The market likes certainty. Who knows tomorrow by the time this video gets published?
could be another T word drop.
Yeah, who knows, right? We never know. But so far, the waters are a little more calm than they've been. So that's all good. So the market likes certainty. Where have we been over the course of the last month? So we came into the month of May. Sales were 29% lower than they were the year before.
That's not surprising.
What was May the year before? Do you remember? Was it good, bad, or ugly?
It's tough to say. I think it was probably more steady than it is today. It's been a very big decline the last 6 months at least.
Yeah.
And then we're obviously going to talk about what we felt over this last month, but I felt it was a bit of a better market, a little bit more stable, I'd say.
Yeah. Oh, and you'd be right. So the market was increasing in terms of sales volume each month up until about June. And then it was just basically like a slow decline all the way to today, right? With little fluctuations in between.
Totally.
So last year, this time was definitely better. So we're finding the sales in the market right now are about 29% below last year's. So let's put that in perspective. This month last year, 1,517 sales in the Fraser Valley Real Estate Board. So that's North Delta all the way to Chilliwack, okay? That was 21% below the 10-year average. Okay, so, not awesome. Not terrible maybe, but certainly not great, right? So come the month of finishing April, going into May of 2025, 1,043 units sold, right? So 474 fewer units sold year over year. Now, this number is a lot less awesome. We are at 55.6% of the 10-year average, or flipped on its head, 45% below what the 10-year average is in terms of sales.
That's almost half. That's almost 50%.
Yeah. So
Bonkers.
that's a lot, right? So you mix a lack of sales with listings. So listings have been increasing. Last month, as an example, they didn't post this exact number for this month, but last month, for the month of April, they had posted that there was over 10,000 active listings available in the real estate board, which was 59% above the 10-year average. So you've got way more inventory to look at and way less inventory being removed from the market, which is a compound effect, right? It starts stacking on top of each other unless people get frustrated, and people do, that take their homes off the market, but there's lots of people that are interested or committed to selling their properties. You've got this chasm going on. And that's exactly, what you're running into when you're out there with buyers, that reluctance. I've got all this stuff to look at.
Exactly.
I don't have to make any decisions. Maybe prices are going down. We're going to talk about whether prices are going down here because it's interesting. Yeah. And you've got some hot little information there.
It's going to be a good one.
So that's kind of where we are, month to date sort of thing, or year to date, I guess you could say. So we're about 45% below the 10-year average. So that's not awesome, right? What does that result in? Well, buyers have more time. They can negotiate. They don't have to jump on properties. You start to see days on market go up for sellers. It's a little bit more of a price war oftentimes for sellers. So it's the famous beauty contest and a price war, right? Yeah, so the house has to look good. It's got to be priced right, all that sort of stuff. And they need to be priced well. So like my experience on the listings that we have right now, and I've heard a lot of realtors talking about this. This has been really interesting, is whatever your interpretation of like market value might be, it always seems like that is not quite enough, right? It's maybe enough to get the people in the door and come take a look and all that sort of stuff, but just not enough for them to act. What we've kind of anecdotally heard is that when you look a little bit more like a deal, and I'm not talking like, let's say I'm like
hundreds of thousands of dollars, but just percentages.
Yeah, let's say like a townhouse that should be worth $1 million. Maybe you're at 980. Those are the properties that are selling. Just that little extra spice or, a little bit of shade of color that's added to that value. Those tend to be the ones that are actually moving right now.
That's right.
When the ground's moving underneath your feet and prices potentially are coming down in your neighborhood for your sub area and your niche type of product that you have, whether it's a condo, townhouse, detached, that makes a difference, right? So being positioned appropriately versus just kind of that average in the middle of the market, doing what everybody else is doing, and you're really leaving it up to the buyer, right? You've got 10 houses that are all within the same price of each other. What do?
Pick the best deal is what I say.
Yeah, and that could be different things. It doesn't always have to be price.
It could be best layout, best view, best square footage, best use of the unit, best price. Sometimes, a lot of factors go into which one's better. Because I'd rather choose the one that's on, let's say, in condos on the 32nd floor, that's decently priced than one that's on the ground floor that's maybe super low price. It's there's all different variables, right?
To each their own. Yeah, maybe one's on a busier street, right? Maybe one's got a south-facing yard. Maybe one's in a strata complex that has a lower strata fee. Like there's lots of variables to that. The question is though, is like, is this all resulting in prices coming down? So we're gonna talk about that because I think some of the information you're gonna share is really gonna surprise people.
Totally.
What I'm really seeing though is there's not a lot of consistency with what's happening in the different areas. So number one, we don't want to paint the entire market with the same brush because you can't do that, right? You have a different product than what I have. You live in a different area than I do. We're both in South Surrey, but like different communities, right? You go to different grocery stores than I do, all that sort of stuff. So that's everywhere, right? You can't paint everything with the same brush. Even when you hear statistics on the news and they say Canadian home prices are down, whatever, let's say they're down like 5%, you don't own an average Canadian home. You own a home, a specific type of home in a specific location in South Surrey, right? That's a specific age, that has a specific size, right? So taking all that into account is really important. This is such a wild chasm of difference. So you had mentioned North Surrey earlier. There's one unit in particular that you've been frequenting.
That's right.
They just can't get rid of you. And the takeaway from this is certainly not from lack of us trying to sell it. We've been throwing everything at this place that we do with all of our listings. How many open houses have you held there?
We've held, I want to say 4 to 5.
I think it's 5.
Yeah, I kind of lost track, but about 5. In those 5 weekends with a 2-hour open house window, one day, I probably got 2 groups that came through in the 5 weeks that I've been doing.
And those were on the first one.
And those are on the first one. Yep.
Yeah.
And so you'll allude to how many units we have, or sorry, how many units are in the building that are for sale. So you're also going to have the number of units within a specific building, but you're also going to talk about the just amount within that area as well too. So
yeah, well, and this is North Surrey high rises, right? So the building that you're talking about that you've been frequenting, I like that. It sounds like you're doing something shady. The unit you've been frequenting has 17 listings available right now. And that's not unique to this building, right? It's a high rise. I don't know how many units are in there, but I'm going to guess there's 140 maybe. I don't know, right? Yeah. But you've been sitting in the lobby having conversations with all these other realtors that have signs all over the neighborhood. They're
that's almost like like we are all putting signs down, and it's all compounding to bring people in.
Yeah,
but no one comes in. So
yeah, so everybody's having the same results.
Right? That's right.
Yeah, so it's like getting all dressed up for a dance and nobody's showing up, right? Right. So that's the experience in Wally right now, North Surrey, Central Surrey. I actually figure, but the amount of inventory that's out there, I had this experience with a gentleman who was interested in listing his condo, and like we're trying to be very frank with people because it's a lot of work and a lot of money for us to list properties and whatnot. So I was chatting with this guy on the phone prior to going out and meeting him and just saying like, look, if you're not prepared to put it at a value that's going to cause it to sell, you've got your optimistic pricing because you paid far too much for it when you bought it. Didn't buy it through us, thank goodness.
No.
But you paid far too much for it, and I get it. You want to recover your money, but the conditions are what they are, right? The market is always right? The market will always tell you exactly what your property is worth, and it's never wrong. It's always right. So I said to him, "What? You want like $50,000 more than the high optimistic number that I can get you. I don't need to come out there and see the unit. Doesn't matter, right?" So of course he says, no, we're realistic. I'm prepared to sell it for a price. I need to get rid of it, right? This poor guy is burning cash every month too. He's losing money on the tenancy after he's got it rented out, but after the amount that he's getting, property taxes, insurance, his mortgage, like he's burning $1,500 a month as well on this place. So he's lost money from the purchase and his carrying costs monthly. So naturally, as him and many sellers do, we're looking at the skyline. It's one of the low rises on the outskirts of Wally. And he goes, well, I think I want to list it about, $50,000 higher than what you're suggesting, right? And I just said, I'm sorry, I can't do that. There's somebody else there that will do that for you, but unfortunately I can't help you. And I was trying to help this gentleman understand, and we're looking at the skyline of all the high rises out there. And I had done my homework, obviously, prior to meeting this guy. And I said, and I think it was about 74, 75 identical units of the same square footage, same age, different buildings,
Totally.
different locations, but all relatively similar, same floor plans. There's not a lot of uniqueness going on there, right?
So
You and 75 other people within $25,000 up or down are trying to do the exact same thing right now at that price. You are going to be lost in the middle, right?
it's like trying to be gladiator. You just throw 75 in the ring, and you're hoping for the one that sells. Right?
That's right.
So,
And you're burning $1,500 a month. Your choice, right? You want to be lost in the middle, and might I add, has nothing to do with the actual sale prices, right? Nothing to do with what places are actually selling for. Like, people don't know what those numbers are. Like, they're not getting that information from their realtors, right? Like, the appraisal doesn't matter when someone needs to go in and get a mortgage, and the appraiser goes, you're 50 grand high on this. The bank's not going to lend you money, just so you know. Thanks for paying me to come out, right? So, the poor guy, I feel for him, and I get it. Like, nobody loves to lose money. The conversation around opportunity costs comes up. If he could get his money out, could he put into a different investment that might grow a little bit faster? But anyways, poor guy, right? So, I wish him lots of luck. I hope he has some success with whatever he chooses to do with it. But, it ain't looking good. But, the takeaway from that is just how tough that market is. I was looking today between price points between 600,000 and 700,000. There's 148 listings available, and there's been 5 sales in 30 days. That's like a 3% chance of selling.
wow, I don't like those odds, man.
No. Okay, let's flip the script though.
Okay.
South Surrey, White Rock.
Yep.
Why in the world are detached home prices up $60,000 from January? How does that make sense?
Location, and people want a detached home. It looks like.
Yeah, you know what? There's a great saying that prices take the elevator up when they go up, and they take the stairs down when they go down, because prices are sticky, right? People don't, to the gentleman I just described, people don't like what they consider giving away their property, right? I mean, it's an asset. There's different things people can buy out there. It's worth what it's worth, right? But very interesting. So you got a market in South Surrey, White Rock that since January has been steadily increasing in value, all while the market is difficult, right? The conditions are still very, very difficult. So places, my takeaway from this is we talked about there is places selling, right? And it's typically the people that are positioning themselves with a little bit of a deal mindset, right? Doesn't mean they're negotiating big things off their asking price, but they're actually positioning their property in the market to sell, not just amongst the average. The question is, though, is the market dead? I would say no.
I'd say the same thing. And anecdotally, and you could probably attest to this too, the phones are ringing. They are ringing. Whereas you would have asked me 4 months ago, 3 months ago, we were hoping for people to call. And now it feels like more people are starting to want to start doing things as well. So maybe this could be the delayed spring we think we're going to get.
Yeah, well, hopefully. And my takeaway from this is so there was about 1,000 sales last month, right? That's still 1,000 people that transacted properties. That means you had 1,000 sellers roughly who had to agree with 1,000 buyers to make the transaction come together.
Yep.
That is not a dead market. That's a productive market. Now, is it dead seasonally? Yeah, the spring market is usually the one of the busiest. I have a colleague who was talking about, he's a realtor. He's talking about getting a second job, and this is like a long time realtor. That's how difficult he's finding the market right now. But with that being said, there was over 1,000 transactions. That's more consistent with like a winter month, like a December, where everyone's thinking about going on holidays. But the point of that is, out of 10,000 listings, roughly about 1 out of 10 of them actually transacted because they were positioned properly and people were out there recognizing the value. So I would like to kind of suggest the market's not dead. People are buying and selling real estate. It's just what is getting bought and sold that is the difference maker in that conversation.
Yeah, there's either price it to market, and then we start to see more days on market as you price it to market, but you price it closer to what is considered a deal.
Yeah.
We're not talking hundreds of thousands, we're talking about percentages. Those are the ones that are moving. Those are part of those 1,000. And you can elaborate on that one as well too, but that's kind of how we're feeling or how it feels to me.
Yeah, totally. And, sometimes you do need time on the market. It's not always to say that, the price is the issue. Sometimes when you've got a slower market, it literally means there's not someone who's bought that type of product yet, maybe this month as an example, but they might come along next month. To kind of go against what I just said though, burying your head in the sand is not a solution, right? So I've said this many times, but as a home seller, you've got two levers you can pull. One is price, one is time. You know, I could get $1 million townhouse. I could get $2 million for that townhouse one day. Not today though.
Maybe
right?
30 years from
Maybe 30 years from now. So if you want to pull the time lever, I need a 30-year listing agreement and I will get you that $2 million. But if you don't want to wait that long, you have to pull the price lever and you have to put it into a position that's going to affect a sale, right? So it's very, very interesting market. You know, we've been living in this sort of environment for about 3 years now. This is not the first time this has happened. I think this is my third round of a, depressed market since I've been selling real estate. I think it's your second for you.
That's right.
Yeah. So, very interesting, but hopefully if nothing more, people take away from this, just the positioning, the importance of positioning and what is actually getting properties sold versus what's causing those other, 9,000, 10,000 properties to sit on the market. So I think people are going to be really surprised with what's happening with the numbers though. I think this tells a lot of the story because, to my example, prices take the elevator up and the stairs down. I would love for you to fill everybody in on what's going on with prices, both Fraser Valley and Lower Mainland.
Fair. Should I switch it up and go the year first?
Let's do it.
Okay, let's do it. All right. So may not be as surprising for the year, but I'm not going to give away what's going to come for the 3 months here. So for the year in apartments, minus 2.1% in the Lower Mainland and minus 3.2% in the Fraser Valley. So just kind of getting rocked in the last year.
So let's say average price Fraser Valley, actually the average price is, or the benchmark price rather, is about 450,000. So we take, that's kind of a 1-bedroom, 2-bedroom mixed up, all different ages sort of thing. So, 2%'s $9,000.
Yep.
Okay.
And then townhomes, Lower Mainland, both of them in the Lower Mainland and Fraser Valley, both minus 2.5. So similar to what you were saying as well. So call it
$1 million for easy math. Yeah.
Make it easy. So what's that?
25 grand.
25. Yeah.
People,
Long day.
Because you're good at real estate in your hands. So not because of your mask.
That's it. Yeah. And then last but not least, we're going to go Lower Mainland for detached. So these ones are staying pretty close to zero. So in the Lower Mainland, minus 0.4, Fraser Valley, minus 1.3. So we're still there. We're almost baseline 0% for those, but there's still just a little bit of drawback from those ones.
Now, even those, for how difficult we just described the market to be, those are pretty minimal price changes, to be honest. Where is it in the last 3 months for the types of inventory?
Here we go. So do you want to make a guess?
I feel like I know them. I'm going to let you tell the good people.
Fair. Okay. So for apartments in the Lower Mainland, we're seeing 1.7% positive. And in the Fraser Valley, we're 0.6% positive. So no negatives here.
So 3 months, we've seen positives for both.
That's right.
All right.
Okay. Townhomes, similar. Lower Mainland plus 0.2%, and Fraser Valley we're almost at 1% positive in the last 3 months.
So we've got one of the most challenging markets we've had in a decade,
and we're seeing
positive increases in prices.
That's it. Well, the detached similar as well, 1% in the Lower Mainland, but almost 1.7% in the Fraser Valley.
Wow!
So we're actually going upwards in the last 3 months. But we're down almost 2 to 3% in the last year.
Yeah, well, and I'm glad you said that because it's important to note there is a story in those 12 months, right? The market's gone up or gone down, and 3 months is a story too because that's just a snapshot from a point in time. But I guess from 3 months, seeing those properties improve since I guess roughly the month of January, February, sort of thing.
That's it.
We've seen some improvements in price. That's interesting.
Yeah.
It'll be interesting to see where that continues to go. I think that's kind of common of a spring market, to be honest, anyways. But it'll be interesting to see where that continues to trend because people don't like knowing that properties are getting more expensive. That's probably not big enough changes to get the average person excited necessarily.
Yeah.
But with that being said, that's not necessarily a bad thing. And when people hear that the market's improving, that makes buyers think, what is it going to take to get these buyers off the fence? Is it one more rate change and maybe one more piece of positive news or hearing that the prices maybe are improving? it's got to be close.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
You can't have this good of conditions and still have all these people that need to buy homes sitting on the fence.
Yeah, because just like you said, it's always competing interests, right? If it's good for a buyer, it's bad for a seller, and bad for a seller, it's good for a buyer. Well, right now we're finding it's very difficult to be a seller and selling. So what does that mean on the flip side?
Yeah.
It's buyer's opportunity right now.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's very interesting. I'm looking forward to, ideally a delayed spring market. I hope that is the case. I guess we're going to find out pretty quick because we're kind of living it right now. We know that showings are continuing to be difficult to achieve and whatnot. But, if anybody's watching this that does have their home for sale, if they can take away that advice, that's what we're hearing anecdotally on the street and experiencing through our own listings. The ones that are just a little bit sharper than everybody else are the ones that are getting the action, the offers, and they're getting to move on. Forget about price. It's all about moving on with your life.
100%.
Right? I mean, you can live in your house for if the house that you don't like that you want to sell for as long as you want. Right? It's your life. I mean, I only got one trip around the sun.
That's pretty.
No, that yeah. I hope I got more than that.
Yeah.
But I'm only here for this one shot, as far as I know. Right? So if you want to wait 2-3 years for the market to come back,
and then delay your plans 2-3 years from now, I'd rather deal with it now and then make the next chapter move. So
totally. Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you for sharing that. That's I think everyone's got the info they need. You got any words of wisdom?
Just like I say, each month, be kind and treat each other with respect. We're in a weird world, a lot of uncertainty. Let's just treat each other well, okay?
I love that. I love that. I am going to leave people with, your home is unique in many ways. And, all the stuff we're mentioning today, again, is, very general, hitting everything with the same brush sort of thing. So it's really important to get information for your own specific home.
Yeah.
Take the words that we chatted about here today, to heart, sort of thing. If you are looking at selling your house, and whether it's with us or another real estate professional, they don't love telling you bad news. They don't love going to you and telling you need to do a price adjustment sort of thing. So, but their job is also to put you in a position to affect a sale. So, if that's what it takes based on their advice and the market data that they're looking at, be gentle on them.
Yeah.
We're very fortunate because we have to have those tough conversations sometimes with people too. And we're very lucky that our clients are all really, really great people. And, based on the data that we give them, we empower them to make decisions, whatever that might be, right? It's not our house, it's their house. We're just there to give them the information. So
That's it, man.
Cool, buddy. All right. Thanks for joining me.
Appreciate it.
Cheers.
You too.